It was the middle of summer, and my parents had for the weekend to go to our house in the Cape Cod. It's about a 2-hour drive away, so it's no big deal for them to leave me alone for a few days. My mom had made some pulled pork and pasta for me to heat up to eat whenever, and I had some money if I wanted to order a pizza. Things were all good. The first night I was alone, I stayed up till 3 in the morning playing Xbox, so I woke up really late the next day. I checked my phone when I woke up and saw it was a little past 1. I had made plans to play some street hockey with my friends at 3, so I threw myself out of bed and stumbled into the shower. I take really long showers, so when my parents are gone, I go mental. I was in there for about 45 minutes on my phone scrolling through Reddit and Twitter and whatnot when I heard my front door open. The bathroom is directly up the stairs from the back door, and the thing is pretty loud when it opens and closes. I immediately froze, since obviously I was supposed to be alone. I waited for about 2 minutes, ears trained in trying to hear anything else. Nothing. I figured it was just the wind, or maybe my parents were home early. So I turned off the shower, wrapped my towel around myself, and slowly walked down the stairs to check it out. So the stairs to the kitchen, where the back door is, are pretty tight and walled in. So it's essentially like walking down a tighter version of this, but replacing the rail with a wall. So I can't see into the kitchen when I walk down. Even though my house is old as shit, and each step on the stairs makes a super loud creak, I still took my time and tried to be as quiet as possible. I probably took 45 seconds walking down all 12 of the stairs. So when I get to the second to last stair, right before I could see around the corner into the kitchen, I take a little breath to compose myself. In my mind, I knew I was being stupid. There obviously wasn't anything in the kitchen. There's no way I wouldn't have heard another noise. And there's no reason for them to still be in the kitchen, even if there were burglars or something in the house. After sort of mentally chastising myself for being such a wuss, I sort of chuckled to myself for being so stupid, and just normally walked the last 2 stairs and turned the corner into the kitchen. Standing about 2 feet away from me, in the middle of my kitchen, is a man staring straight at me, perfectly still, with a massive smile across his face, just staring at me. The thing I remember most vividly wasn't his face or his smile, but his arms. They weren't just at his side. He held them in the strangest, most Born Mall position I've ever seen. They were where one would normally hold their arms, but he had rotated them to the point where they were almost completely reversed, as well as lifting them up and a little behind himself. I don't know why I remember this so much, but it's just the most demonic, abnormal position I've ever seen. Honest to God, I think I almost had a heart attack right there. Looking back, I can realize how fucking creepy this situation was, but in the moment, I just took a step towards him and punched him as hard as I could in the jaw, sort of half-slapping, pushing him towards the ground. The second I connected, I beelined up the stairs, dropping my towel in the kitchen, with my heart beating out of control. I fucking sprinted into my room and locked the door behind me. I quickly put a chair up against the doorknob. Almost without thinking, I immediately called 911 and, nearly in tears, told the operator what happened. As I sat on the floor of my room, in practically the fetal position, staring at the door, praying that a cop would be here soon, I noticed the light coming from the gap between my door had stopped. The fucker was standing outside of my door. There's no words to describe the feeling I had. I was paralyzed with fear, watching the shadow across the bottom of the door shift in tiny ways. I stayed balled up, staring at the gap, praying the man would go away for what seemed like an hour. All the while, the 911 operator was asking, "Hello, sir. Sire, are you there? Hello?" I didn't want to make a noise, and even if I wanted to move my arms to bring the phone to my mouth, I don't think I could have. Eventually, the light returned to the gap, and I heard the faintest of footsteps, slowly creaking the wooden floorboards as he walked down the hall. It was silent for minutes as I just sat there curled up, unable to even speak. I heard banging on the front door and the sound of 2 officers entering my house. I finally felt safe, and I opened the door to the 2 of them standing there. I almost cried. Nowadays, my parents don't even leave me home alone anymore, thank God, and I check every lock on the house before going to bed. I still get nightmares occasionally, and my heart starts racing whenever I see someone standing still, but I'm doing all right. Even working with sketch artists and a few lineups, the police never found whoever the fuck was in my house. That sends shivers down my spine every time I look outside, half expecting to see him standing across the street smiling under a lamppost. I have no idea what he wanted or who he was, but regardless, let's not meet ever again. I was 13 when this happened. Back then, I lived with my dad and older brother in a small duplex on the edge of town. It wasn't anything fancy, just 2 bedrooms, faded carpet, and a backyard that backed up to a dark, narrow alley. I shared a room with my dad, and my brother had his own across the hall. It was normal for them to go out at night. My dad spent most evenings at the bar, and my brother was in that stage where he'd rather be anywhere but home. So I got used to having the house to myself. I'd usually stay up late, sitting cross-legged in front of the TV, playing video games until I couldn't keep my eyes open. That night wasn't any different. I was playing Resident Evil on the old PlayStation, the one with the loud loading noises and grainy graphics. I remember it clearly because the house was dead silent except for the sounds from the game. Around midnight, I started nodding off and finally decided to call it a night. My dad's bed was just a few feet away from mine, and I left the bedroom door wide open, the way I always did. It sounds weird now, but I liked being able to see the hallway. It made me feel less boxed in. Here's the thing, though. In all the time we lived there, no one ever used the backsliding door to come inside. Ever. It was stiff, old, and it screeched horribly when opened. My dad always came through the front, and if my brother forgot his key, he'd just knock on my window until I let him in. That's why when I heard that back door slide open that night, my entire body went still. The sound was unmistakable, metal scraping on metal, followed by a heavy thud when it finally caught on the track. Whoever it was didn't even try to be quiet. I lay there, frozen, staring into the darkness of the hallway. I could hear the footsteps now, slow, heavy ones moving through the dining room, across the kitchen floor, then into the living room. Each step seemed deliberate. There was a pause. And then I saw movement. From where I was lying, I had a clear view of the doorway, and I watched as someone walked past it. A tall figure, shoulders broad enough to block part of the light from the bathroom night bulb down the hall. My throat went dry. It wasn't my dad. It wasn't my brother. The person went into the bathroom and flipped the light on. That one act made everything worse. The light spilled straight into my bedroom, fully illuminating me lying there on the bed. I remember trying not to even blink, hoping whoever it was wouldn't notice. I didn't call out, because deep down, I knew it wasn't anyone I knew. The man stayed in the bathroom for a few seconds, then walked out, leaving the light on, and went straight into my brother's room. I heard drawers being pulled open, boxes moving, the sound of things falling onto the carpet. He was searching for something. I don't know how long I lay there like that. Minutes, maybe longer. Then the footsteps came back. He walked past my room again, his shadow sliding across my floor. Then he went into the living room, then back toward the hallway, then into the bathroom again, over and over, back and forth. Every time he passed my doorway, I held my breath. At one point, I realized he wasn't just moving around randomly. He was avoiding my room. Every door opened, every space searched except mine. And that thought scared me more than anything else, because it meant he knew I was there. I could hear his breathing now, heavy, tired, almost annoyed. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. No more footsteps, no more drawers opening. Then came that same loud sliding sound again, the back door opening, and then closing. He left. I don't remember falling asleep, but somehow I did. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was pouring through the blinds, and I could hear my dad moving around in the kitchen. My brother was home too. I ran to ask them if either of them had come in through the back door last night. Both swore they hadn't. My dad said he got home after 2 a.m. and used the front door like always. My brother said he crashed at a friend's place. We checked the house. Nothing was missing. Not a single thing. To this day, I still can't explain it. Why would someone break in and not take anything? Why would they walk back and forth through every room, but never step into mine, even though the door was wide open? That was 21 years ago, and I still think about it sometimes. especially on quiet nights when I'm home alone. Because whoever that man was, he didn't just wander into the wrong house. He knew exactly where I was. And for some reason, he chose to leave me there. I was 13 when this happened, old enough to stay home alone, but still young enough to think nothing bad could actually happen to me. The house I lived in back then had a small balcony that connected my bedroom and my mom's. Both rooms had these big glass double doors that opened onto it. During the day, I loved that balcony. I'd climb up one of the trees that grew next to it, sit out there with a book, and listen to cars pass by on the street below. It faced the front of our house, which meant the streetlight across the road always cast soft orange glow through my curtains at night. That night, my mom and brother were both out. My brother had a friend's birthday, and my mom was working late. I was home by myself, curled up in bed reading under a small lamp. The house was quiet enough that I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. At some point, I heard movement outside, something shifting in one of the trees beside the balcony. It didn't bother me at first. We had possums, bats, and all kinds of night creatures around. I kept reading. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something, a shadow moving across the glass doors that led to the balcony. At first, I thought maybe it was a trick of the light, but then it moved again, slowly, smoothly, and it was tall. Much too tall to be one of the neighborhood kids who sometimes played in our yard. Definitely not my mom either. I reached over and turned off my reading lamp. The room went almost completely dark, except for the orange streetlight bleeding through the curtains. My heart was pounding as I sat perfectly still, watching the faint outline of a person creeping past the doors. They moved like they were trying not to be heard, each step slow, deliberate. From where I sat, I could see their silhouette clearly. The streetlight behind them turned their body into a black cutout against the glass. I waited for them to leave, but instead I heard the faint jingle of metal. They were trying the door handle, my mom's set of doors. It clicked softly, again and again. That's when I realized my mom might not have locked them before leaving. The thought made my chest tighten. I got up as quietly as I could and crept to my bedroom door. I turned the lock, the tiny sound of it clicking into place feeling deafening in the silence. The handle outside kept rattling. It sounded like the person was testing it, gently at first, then harder. I waited for the sound to stop, hoping they'd give up and leave. But then I heard footsteps again, light ones, moving slowly across the balcony, coming toward my doors. I stood still, barely breathing, and watched as the shadow stopped right in front of my curtains. It just stood there, facing my room. Then a hand reached up. I could see the shape of it clearly, the way the fingers curled around the handle. And at that moment, I realized something awful. I'd been out on that balcony earlier that afternoon. I couldn't remember if I'd locked the doors afterward. My whole body tensed. I stared, waiting for the door to open, praying I'd locked it without remembering. The handle moved. Once, twice, then stopped, locked. I nearly cried from relief. But before I could even process it, the shadow began pacing, back and forth, slowly, across the balcony. I didn't have a phone. My mom thought I was too young to need one. The landline was in the kitchen, on the far side of the house. I couldn't risk moving. I couldn't risk making a sound. So I just stood there, tears silently running down my face, watching the shape of a stranger walk back and forth outside my window. Then, after what felt like forever, he stopped, and in a calm, low voice, he said, "I could just break the glass, you know." My heart dropped. He'd been standing there just a few feet away the whole time, and now he was talking. Before I could even react, headlights appeared on the street outside. My mom's car turned the corner, pulling up to the front gate. The man didn't hesitate. He stepped away from the doors, and a second later, I heard a heavy thud as he jumped from the balcony. When my mom came inside, I was still shaking. I tried to tell her what happened, but the words came out scrambled. She eventually understood and called the police. They searched the yard, but there was no one around. Nothing was stolen. No signs of forced entry. But one of the neighbors said they'd seen a truck parked down the street earlier that night, a truck that matched the description of one involved in several attempted child abductions near my school. The police thought the man might have followed me home at some point. Maybe he'd been watching, waiting for a night when my mom wasn't there. That balcony was sealed shut after that. My mom had a locksmith bolt both sets of doors closed. But for years after, every time I walked past those curtains, I couldn't help but imagine that dark shape standing there again, silent, patient, and waiting.